Most people don't feel stuck with money because they're lazy or irresponsible. They feel stuck because they're overwhelmed. They don't know where to start. They're afraid of making the wrong move. And the longer the wait, the heavier it feels. Today's conversation is about how to move your financial life forward without hype, without fear, and without needing to become a finance expert. Today, I get to sit down with Ryan Gonce. Ryan, you are the founder of Bridgeline Wealth Strategies, Inc. You are a financial planner. You help people actually create strategies to move their finances forward. So I'm really excited for people to understand how they can move their finances forward in a really practical way. But a quick disclaimer, this is all meant for education. It's not advice. Both of us work for different financial institutions. And so it's important to say that what we're expressing is our own thoughts and purely meant for education.
That's right. Everyone should have their own financial plan. And the idea today is like we push people to getting a plan and getting a strategy to help them create wealth. So we don't want to, this isn't for an individual to pick up and say, hey, we're going to take all these strategies and we're going to do this just off this podcast. No, we want you to meet with a financial planner, get some traction, move your life forward. But here's some things that we see that can help you maybe overcome some hurdles that are stopping you from moving forward.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. For the average person that's coming to see you, what are they feeling about their finances?
Well, most people have some kind of investments put together. They may have taken some action and gotten some insurance. They probably have a mortgage or something, but they don't have a strategy to get them forward. And there's like these specific areas where you need strategies. It's the pre-retirement, like, hey, we want to buy a cottage at some point, or hey, we're going to be upgrading our vehicles. Like, how do we plan for that? Then there's like the post-retirement, which is like and there's three phases in there. There's the go, the slow go, and the no go, where there's like distinct different eras of retirement. And then, of course, there is the end of life planning, where we want the estate and finances to transfer efficiently to their heirs or beneficiaries, or in a lot of cases now charities. People are like, hey, I don't want to necessarily leave it all to the kids. Let's impact the world around us. So we help people with get a plan for the different phases. And when they come to me, they only have bits of it. And they may have a concept or idea of what they want to get to, but they don't know how to get there.
Right.
And our job is, ask a lot of questions and see how we can get them to the place they want to be.
Yeah.
And that takes some creativity. That's an individual thing, because everyone has individual dreams and hopes and a view of what their retirement life is going to look like, or even their pre-retirement life. And so we got to help them achieve those goals.
Yeah.
Efficiently.
Personal finances is personal.
Mm-hmm.
Each person's going to have different dreams, like you said. But I'm curious, what is the common thread that you see with people who are doing well with their finances? Is there one common thing?
Well, the most common thing is that they don't overspend. The people who are doing well all have savings. And it gives them so much traction and so much peace, because they're not as worried about like the next paycheck or the next thing, or whether or not they're going to get a family vacation this year. They know that's going to happen because they haven't overspent in the other areas. It's always interesting, like when I see people who are below 40 who have their mortgage completely paid off. Those people, like when we're doing financial plans, we're not like, okay, you might have to work to 67. The goals start to change, and we say, okay, let's see if we can get you retired by 55, and those kind of conversations happen like much differently than the people who haven't saved. And what I find is most people who are 40 and have their house paid off, they didn't have necessarily the great big house. They picked a smaller house, got it paid off, and had money to do the things they wanted to do. And so they were much more strategic in how they did it. There was an adage maybe 25 years ago when people would say, buy the biggest house you can afford. And when you buy your first house, just buy the absolute largest house you can afford. And that was a strategy. That was all the advice. Just get the biggest mortgage, max financed, go for it. And that would put these people in this spot where they were house poor, couldn't travel. Okay, they couldn't do the things they wanted to do, and they couldn't save. And so people have done that differently in this era. Instead of just being house poor, they're things poor. They have to have everything they see on social media, and this is a funny one, Andrew. They call themselves minimalist.
Right.
Okay. And so what I see happening is they say they're minimalist because they don't have two of one thing, but they bought the expensive item And then 2 years later, the trend changes. And now they have to have that other new expensive item because the old one no longer fits the trend. So they did get rid of the item. They threw it in the garbage or whatever, okay? And they have the new item. But they wasted money because they did buy 2 of them and then call themselves a minimalist. And you're like, that's crazy. No one would do this. But I'm like, look at water bottles, okay? That Stanley water bottle is the funniest thing going, that they think they need a $50 item to drink water out of.
Yes.
Okay.
And
I'm like,
it tastes so much better.
It tastes marginally better. That's correct. It does taste better. Okay. But that's a one piece item that I see that like people are just overspending and caught on trends, social media, what their friends have, keeping up with the Joneses in different areas. That is just very interesting.
Yes.
And the people who are making traction, they're driving the used vehicles. They're more intentional about their money. They're paying attention to their credit card being paid off, so they're not paying interest on things. Like there's a trend of take care of my money, and take care of the pennies, and the dollars will take care of themselves. And they're watching everything they're spending. And when you have a good saver in the house, even if there's 1 out of 2, there's going to be traction. If there's 2 savers in the house,
watch out.
Their mortgage is paid off by 40, and they're cash millionaires by probably 45, 50.
Right. There's a lot of things to unpack there. Because I look at the fact that the average Canadian spends $1.71 for every dollar that they earn.
Yeah.
Meaning they're constantly going backwards. And then you look at the number 1 cause of divorce in Canada is finances.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't surprise me that people would be overspending so much that they're stressing their relationship and it ends up creating divorce.
Yeah.
And so for the individual that is caught in this cycle, they need that dopamine hit. And that's why they keep buying the new flashy thing, or if they're trying to keep up with the Joneses. What's the practical step that they can take?
Well, they need to get a budget. And so there's like some really practical things they can do. There's you need a budget app, YNAB. Okay, you can just download the app, and I think there's a cost to it, but get it, and it helps you get a budget. So stay on track with budget. And people are like, oh, only poor people budget. I'm like, that's ridiculous. Every Fortune 500 company has a budget that they run their company off of. So like it's okay if you have a budget. All the budget is a plan for how you're going to spend your money. And if you have a plan for it, even if you're slightly off it, at least you have a plan that gives you a direction. And so I learned finance from my uncle. But he started teaching me at the age of 10 how to handle money. And one of the things he always taught me was pay yourself first. Okay, and he handed me the book, Wealthy Barber. He said, read this. And people are like, you can start reading finance. Yes, but if you're 40 or 50 and you've never read those kind of books, you can start reading those books right away. So he handed me the Wealthy Barber, and one of the things in there was pay yourself first. And if I haven't, which means save some money and invest it. And if I haven't done that over the course of the year, I really haven't made any money. So in my budget, for me and my wife, like we put in order, we give, save, and then live. And so saving is pay yourself first. And that's an important part of the budget. Then once I have given some money away so that my life is not all about me, once I have saved, then I put my expenses in there. Then I start saying, okay, I can put a car in there. I can put a house in there. And I prefer if people save for cars, but if you have to have a car payment, fine, put it in there. But it's all of that is after you have saved. Okay, how much you're spending on date night, how much you're putting in your family vacation savings account, all those things are after you've saved money for your long-term future. Okay, and if we put those things in the right order, then it's really hard to overspend. But most people have no idea what their life actually costs them. And so that's why we need a budget. We figure out, okay, what's the income coming into our house? Where are we spending it? And where should we be spending it? And once we create that little map, we start making cuts. This is actually the difficult part.
Yes.
Because people have established a certain lifestyle and they don't want to make cuts. And so it's actually the most fun part of a budget. Okay. And my favorite story on this is when my wife said she wanted a housekeeper. Okay. And I wanted a 5th child. Okay.
So
hilarious. I know.
Yeah.
But she said, hey, you could have your 5th child if we get a housekeeper. And I'm like, oh, that's a great trade. I love this idea because she needs help. That's realistic. Okay. And there's something I want, something she wants. Okay. That was a great suggestion. So that's a Friday. Monday, I hear a knock at my door. Okay. there's a lady there holding a bucket of cleaning supplies and a shark vacuum.
It was your fifth child.
It was the housekeeper.
Oh, the housekeeper. Right. Yeah.
So she shows up and I'm like, okay, I guess this is happening. Okay. Date night comes around and I'm like, she's like, well, let's just wait a little bit. I was like, okay. All right. 2 months later, we're still kind of talking about it. And I'm like, hey, hun, it's time to review our budget for the fall. Hey, let's just go through things. And she sees me make a big cross across the page, and she's like, what did you do there? And I was like, well, the housekeeper. And she's like, well, why? What's the deal? I was like, are you pregnant? And she's like, no. And I was like, well, we had a deal, right? And you do not have to get pregnant. That is totally cool. But if we're not having the child, the housekeeper's also going, right? Like, there's no big deal. We'll just make some cuts. Now, we cut in that month probably 2,000 things total. The housekeeper just one of them. But it was like just funny that we get to like discuss it and be like, hey, listen, you're not pregnant?
Right.
It gets cut.
It's funny.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like we cut all kinds of things on a regular basis. It's like, can we carve this budget down to get it as low as possible on the expenses? Not because we want to feel poor or broke. It's because we want to have extra.
Right.
We want to have that feeling of like, oh, we're good. We don't have to worry about money because we didn't spend it all. And people miss that. They think they are going to miss out on life. But what I tell people about budgeting is put your most important things in there.
Mm.
Put your date nights with your kids, your date with your wife. But like, did it really matter if you had the Stanley, but you dated your kid?
That's so good.
And
you're creating memories.
You're creating the things you actually want in your life. In our married life with children, we have gotten our budget down to the place of like $2,500 a month. Okay. We found a place where they'd let us stay for free for 2 years. And it was a prayer center. They need someone to run prayer. We're going to stay there for 2 years for free. And I was like, this is a great opportunity to accelerate our finances for 2 years. And it was like out of the way and kind of inconvenient and extra work, but it like allowed us to cut our budget down to nothing. Okay. And the whole time I just kept making a mortgage payment to myself. Okay. And we just stack up cash. And what I find is like, they're like, that's so extreme. Yeah. Most people won't do extreme things to move their life forward. And I tell you some extreme stories so you realize it's okay to do something extreme to get yourself to a place of healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think that's so powerful. I remember when Emily and I first got married and we had $60,000 of debt.
Mm-hmm.
My debt that I brought into the relationship. So she had a rude awakening. And we reviewed our budget and we realized after everything was said and done, we made the minimum payments on things. We had $5 left over. And it was just such a sickening feeling. And so it was, okay, what can we do? How can we cut things down? So instead of getting steak for protein, we were buying cans of chickpea. And that's what we would eat for protein just to save money in that season. Or instead of just being able to spend whatever we wanted, each one of us got $80 in an envelope at the beginning of the month, and that was our spending money. So if you wanted to buy clothes, if you wanted to go to a restaurant, if you wanted whatever, that was your money. First month, I spent it within the first week, and Emily didn't spend a cent of it. And she just kept compounding it. And then a few months later, all of a sudden she goes and buys all these things that she was saving for. And it gave me this perspective of, oh, I really am the spender in our relationship. And I need to figure out how to become more of that saving mentality. And it's okay to do those hard things because it's a season and you know what's on the other side of it. And paying off that debt felt like such a huge relief off the shoulders. And so you see people that have this large amount of debt. What do you see when they actually start chipping away at it? What are the emotions that start coming up?
Well, it's really interesting. We've taken hundreds of people through debt counseling, basically, right? Where we help them like get a budget, figure out where they can put extra money towards their debt and get the debt started to pay off and all the different pieces of that. And most of the time, we're just using Dave Ramsey's teaching, which I highly recommend. If you're in debt, you want to get out of debt, go through Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University and figure out how to get budget. He's some great tips in there. If you're, all of your friends have debt. If you're in debt, all of your friends have debt. Don't be judgmental or whatever. Get 3 or 4 couples together at your house. Meet once a week. Go through that 12-week series, and by the end of it, you'll be like on your way to being out of debt. Mm. That's what we did. We had $140,000 of debt, mostly student debt, and it was almost all my wife's. She had $135,000 of that, And it was like,
So at least you can contribute some.
something. I got to contribute something to a relationship, right? So when we get married, like there's no extra money. And I thought it would be much easier to pay off than it was because I'd never had debt, right? Just a little bit of student loan. So there's this underestimate of how hard it is to pay off debt. And so people don't think about that when they're going into debt. It is 4 times harder to pay it off than it is to go into it. Than just to make the payment. It's like 4 times harder to make the traction unit. So people don't understand how big that is. So you get into a Dave Ramsey or some kind of course or something that's going to help you get into that, and then you can get this traction. And then when you get the first payment, the first item paid off, the first credit card that you're going to cut up is paid off. There's like this sense of you can accomplish this, and that's one of the things about paying off debt is like they always say, pick the smallest one. If you math it out, like there's a more efficient way. It's the highest interest one you're supposed to pay off first, but sometimes the highest interest one has 20,000 on it, and you just can't get it done. So you pick the smallest one, you get a win. It is important to get a win in your finances. If you've never saved before, setting up an investment account and getting that first, $250 or $500 a month going into that investment account matters. Like that first initial win is important. So I remember the day Kathy called me with the last debt payment. It was May. Okay. She makes the payment. Okay. Calls the people, make sure there's no like 13 cents interest left owing on the account. So it should be closed down. And it felt so liberating. The weight of carrying that around for 7 years comes off my chest, and it's like, okay, now we can start planning family vacations. And you go, you didn't take vacations. We took very minimal, maybe a weekend to the mountains or something. Because, we'd already had that fun. Well, Kathy had already had all that fun. Okay. And we were just paying it off. And people are like, was that painful? Was that a lot on your marriage? That was a lot on our marriage. It was for sure our number one fight. But I tell people that number could have been double or triple. My wife was totally worth it. Right? And I tell people all the time, there's no one in that I know in my friends groups in our church anyway, who I'd trade my marriage with.
Right.
Like my marriage is incredible because we've gone through hard things and done it together. And people miss the point of like the debt payoff could be the struggle that brings you closer than ever. And because people avoid struggle in general, they miss what it could do for them.
Right.
And really, my whole financial planning career was launched because of that debt. If we had never had that debt to pay off, I never would have realized I was good at helping people through it. Never would have taken the courses. Because once we got going through that debt, Kathy said to me, she's like, you need to do this. You need to go help people with their money. You're good at this. If we had never had that debt, we would never be as successful as we are today.
That's incredible.
That is actually incredible. Because you think, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, we have this debt, what are we going to do? You might be on the verge of the closest your relationship have ever been because you're going to tackle a mountain together. And if you're single listening to this, you might be steps away from building character you've never built before and creating the new man or woman you want to be because you tackle something hard.
Right.
It is only through overcoming difficult things that we build any real character in our lives. Yes. And you're moments away from something that could launch you into something huge.
Yeah. I think that's so good because oftentimes we're taught to run away from struggle. We're taught, take the easy path, live in comfort, things will work out. And when most people look back on their lives, they don't usually talk about the best moments of their life. They talk about the struggle and what it created in them. And I think that's so powerful, especially when we're talking about finances, to embrace that struggle, to recognize, hey, this might be a hard season, but what is our financial picture going to look like on the other side? And then who are we going to become on the other side of that? And that's really powerful. So paid off the debt, someone looking at their budget, where should they be allocating their resources to? Like, how much should I actually be investing?
Well, the first goal is 10% of your income. So like that's like a standard basic goal. If you can put aside 10% to long-term investments, and there's different strategies on what you should do with that. But But the second goal is 20%. And so the easy way to get to 10% is you start somewhere with whatever you can. It might be like 3% of your income. And I tell people, every time you get a raise or every time you get extra money from unexpected places, increase your savings first. Because you didn't need that money and you weren't using that money. So for example, in the raise scenario, you get a 2% raise in a year. Okay. Take 1.75% of that and allocate it to savings to get your savings up from 3% to now you're at 4.75%. Okay. And take the other 0.25% and increase some budget that it helps your family or yourself enjoy your life more. Okay. But don't take the full 2% and allocate it to just fun and not think about it. Like, go back to your budget and go, okay, what could use a little addition that would make life better? And then the rest is savings. Okay. And every time that you get a pay increase, you just do that. The average is within 3 or 4 years, you're saving 10%. And everyone knows if you're saving 10%, you don't even notice if it comes right off your paycheck or right out of your bank account as soon as you get paid. You don't notice it. You don't spend it. It's not a big deal. Right. So that's an easy way to increase it. And if you just keep that principle going for a few years, but within, same kind of time frame, 6 to 8 years, you're saving 20% of your income and you're completely on track financially. Now, once you're saving, as long as you're not going into debt on a monthly basis for spending, it almost doesn't matter as much what you're spending your money on. Okay, so what we did was we had a blanket amount in our budget that's going to be like stuff we spend on our credit card. Or some people use debit card. If you don't go with credit cards, just use debit card. Never mind the credit card for now. On the debit card are things like fuel, food, clothing for the children, right? Okay, those are things you actually spend on your debit card. And the rest of your budget's like your mortgage, your insurance, your stuff that's automatic. And so we set up different bank accounts that would allow us to separate all this. And when we get paid, it goes into one account, and then the automatic stuff like your mortgage and everything is to another account. So I was never thinking about whether or not the mortgage is getting paid. Those first 2 accounts, I don't even attach them to my debit card. I can't access them. I can't spend all the money that comes into my account. I can't spend the money that's allocated for mortgage. It's not spending. Then the third account is actually attached to my debit card. So when you choose checking on your debit card, when you go to choose to pay, you can go into your bank and allocate which of your accounts is assigned to your debit card checking button, right? So we assigned account number 3. And in there, I made this mistake. Well, you mentioned you spent your whole budget within a week.
Yep.
Okay, so when I dumped all of the spending for all of the food and everything in there in one go, the first month, it was gone by the 17th. It was a January. I remember 17th of January. I was like, okay, all the money's gone for the food. Okay, we'll have to live off the pantry and the freezer for the next 2 weeks. Okay. So I was like, okay, let's get smarter. Let's just dump a week in there at a time. So I just set it up automatic from the pay account to the things we're spending. Okay. Boom. Done. Do I actually care if my wife spends all of the money in that debit account on food?
Probably not.
I do not. I used to. I used to worry about all of those little things. But once the order was in there, it goes into these accounts. The money's automatically going to investments. It's automatically going to savings. I didn't have to worry about what she's spending the money on. And so one of the biggest fights in the financial world of marriage is, what did you spend all that money on? The actual problem is your money's going out of your account in the wrong order. Once you put the money in the right order, stop nitpicking your spouse on everything they spend their money on, because when the money's out of that debit account is all gone, it doesn't matter. You're going to drop more money in there the next week. So if she runs out of money or he runs out of money by Thursday, okay, Monday you're putting more money in there. It'll be fine. They can go 3 days without extra spending money.
For most of my life, I thought happiness was something you chased, something you earned, something that showed up once life finally worked out. The last few years dismantled that belief. Leading teams, paying off debt, building businesses, raising a family, failing publicly, starting again quietly. What I learned through all of it is this: happiness is not a feeling you wait for. It's something you build, something you invest in, something you protect. That realization changed everything for me. That is why I created the currency of happiness. And if this podcast is connecting with you, I'd love you to do one thing. Leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. This helps us to grow our reach, impact more lives, and gives us the opportunity to bring on more incredible guests. And I think the biggest thing is the systems create peace.
Yes.
We want to have our hand in everything and feel like we have more control if we're manually moving things around. But if we automate it and we know that it's happening in the background,
Oh, yeah.
that's where the true peace comes from. You're not waking up and immediately looking at your online banking and then going to bed checking your online banking. And that's the biggest stressor for so many people is they can't get a good night's sleep because they're so focused on, do I have enough money in my account? And systemizing it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So for individuals where their employer is paying a pension, should they also be investing 10% into their future retirement? Or should they just be relying on their employer's pension?
This is a great question. There are a number of different pensions out there. This could be deep, Andrew, but pensions in private companies, can go bankrupt and can be underfunded. People don't necessarily understand that. So the really funny one is like Canada Post. Their pension is regularly sitting just at funding minimum, which is 75% of all the money they owe to all the pensioners. Okay, so you think about that, you're like, wait, they're missing 25% of their money. Yeah, look it up. They're missing some money. It may have gone back up recently, but it's around there. So I found this out because someone had left Canada Post and they wanted to come to me and move their pension out of Canada Post and make it more secure. And the pension wouldn't let them transfer out because they were underfunded, and so their money was locked in there. So if you have a private company pension, save there, take the free money while you can, but you got to pay attention to that company. How's their balance sheet? Is it strong enough? Because there's legislation now and situations that have happened now where if the company's going bankrupt, they could pull that money back because it's in the company pension. It's technically a company asset. They could pull it back to the company. The famous one in the US is Delta. Okay, Delta's going bankrupt. They go to the Supreme Court and say, hey, listen, we can put 8,000 people out of jobs, or we can put 2,000 pensioners without a pension. What do you want, jobs or the pension? And the Supreme Court's like, okay, keep the jobs going. Okay, bankrupt the pension and pay the people. Okay, so the people who are on pension, we're done. No pension. There's thousands of examples of that. So in a private company, you got to pay attention to the balance sheet, take their free money, and if you see the company going south, move companies, take the pension with you. Because when you move companies, they'll allow you to transfer your pension out. Okay? Government pensions are a little different. They're a little more secure as long as you're not with like a municipality. Okay? There's some municipalities have their own pensions. Okay? Their finances aren't as secure as like a province or a state or a country. So in those cases, I think they're more secure. Review them, have a check on the creditworthiness of the state, province, like Alberta. We live in Alberta. Alberta has its own bonds. And so you can go and check what the credit rating of the bond of Alberta is. That'll tell you the whole credit rating of the province. Okay? If they have a good credit rating, that means it's likely that your pension is going to be fine. So that's one topic. Is your pension safe? The next one is, should I also save? Absolutely. Right? You still need savings there so that you have flexibility in different things. And most people overestimate what their pension is going to pay them. So they think, oh, I'm going to have 90% of my pay, or I'm going to be mostly funded by pension. That's not necessarily the case. You need to dig into it with your financial planner, and they can get numbers and run them for you for what you're going to get paid. But everyone I've seen needs top up. And so we still need to be saving. And if you want to do a car purchase or some kind of large purchase, you need savings. Plus, it builds good habits of controlling your money. Now, the common problem with that I see is like someone who's never had to save and they've only ever lived off of a paycheck, and then they retire and they go right to pension. And all of a sudden the pension isn't high enough to cover their expenses. They really struggle with adjusting because they had a certain pay. They're used to, they're 7, 8, 10,000 a month. And then their pension comes in and it's lower. They're getting now like maybe they're 6,000, maybe they're at 10 originally. Now they're at 6,000 of pay. They have a real hard time adjusting. And they're coming to me going, do I sell my house? What do I do? I can't afford my life. I still have a mortgage. And they just haven't planned. And so the art of investing and creating a plan will get you through multiple layers of questions. Did I have the house paid off on time? Should I have retired then? Was that the right move? So the process of getting the investment going also gets you in the discussion with the financial planner to get you the other questions you need answered. Because the reality is people who work with a planner retire 3 times wealthier than those who don't. Those are the stats. And so it's not just the investment portion. People often think about just the investment. It's the whole plan and the whole conversation and regularly talking about money that gets you where you want to go.
Yeah, that's so important. You at one point mentioned credit rating. For those that aren't familiar with what credit rating is, or if they hear it and it just seems like a scary term that they want to avoid, could you explain what that is?
Sure. So individuals have a credit score. Okay, so you want to get a house, you basically need above 750 to get a reasonable rate on a house, right? So we also track the credit ratings of corporations and provinces, states, countries, and so you can find a credit rating. A lot of them are done by Standard & Poor's, and you actually know more about credit ratings than you think you do. Standard & Poor's, S&P, they created the S&P 500 and other index funds, investments or ways of tracking the investment market. They do ratings on corporations and countries. And so you can say, okay, what is the credit rating of a certain country? You can look it up and it will give you AAA plus is the best. These people have great financial stewardship. They have money in the bank, low debt ratios. Wow, you can put money with them and you probably won't lose. Okay, it's not zero risk, it's little risk, but it's lower. But then you go all the way down, double B or double A, triple B, and the ratings go down. And of course, the better the rating, just like when your credit rating is high, you get a better interest rate. So if a corporation or province or country has a really good credit rating, they also pay lower interest on a bond. So they're not going to pay you as much because we're safe. We don't have to pay you as much to try to get you to go and buy their bond. But of course, the lower grade bonds, like the penny stock or a company that doesn't have great finances, they're trying to attract your money. But instead of ownership, you get a bond. When you buy that, you're going to get a better interest rate. You might get 6 or 7, 8%. But also, if the economy drops, it's a chance that bond goes away and you don't get any money. So it's a way of putting what everyone puts these bonds in low risk. It's not necessarily true. There's a range of risk in there. Okay, and of course, with increased risk, they'll pay you more for that.
Yeah, it's really wise. I'm interested. So you're investing 10%. Should I be investing in silver? That's where my friends are telling me that it's going up. Should I be investing in cryptocurrency? What should I actually be putting that 10% towards for my retirement?
So I have a philosophy for investing that I call core plus explore. So I want to make sure that my core investment philosophy is sound and is for sure going to get me to retirement. Outside of that is the explore is where you're going to take risk. So if you've only started to save 10%, and if you look at your financial plan, you can actually get your financial advisor to do a projection, and it will show you how far above or how much money you are going to have at retirement and versus how much you need. And so if you look at your plan and you're like, hey, my plan shows that I need to retire with 1.5 million of assets. And based on the savings rate I'm currently going on, I'm going to retire with 2 million of assets, of investment assets, right? And you might go, okay, well, then I can afford to take 25% of my monthly savings and put it into something riskier. Okay. But if you look at your financial plan and you're like, hey, it shows that I need 1.5, and currently my trajectory is 7 million of investments, or 700,000. I need 1.5 and I'm at 700,000. Then you're like, okay, everything I have needs to go to the core because I can't afford to lose. Okay, so as of the area of this podcast, like silver might be very high or gold might be very high. And people are like, oh, we got to get on this. It's going to go higher. Well, what if it drops? Silver often has these spikes and then drops off. Okay, now gold tends to hold its value a little bit better, but those things are speculative and we don't know whether or not they're going to continue to go up. And because there's too much speculation, it's better if you put your investments into something that it's a core philosophy, stock market, blue chip, regular strategies that are going to go up on average 8 to 10% a year, and you're going to arrive at retirement on time. Okay, the biggest mistake I see people make is take too much risk. This is very common with physicians. They take too much risk. They don't understand the concept of like, oh, if I lose all this, it takes me a long time to recover it. Because they make so much money, they're like, well, I'll just make more next year. Okay, but the losses in the portfolio drastically slow down your progress. So there's a difference between a loss, like where you get no money back from that investment, and a fluctuation. A fluctuation is the market moves up and down. Fine. A loss is when you put money into something and the next year it's completely gone. And when you have a goose egg, a zero on any portion of your portfolio, it takes a lot higher return than you think to get yourself back to even. So for example, your portfolio goes down 20%. You go from 100 down to 80. Now to get back up to 100 again, it's not up 20% because 20% of 80, okay, is 16, right? So if you go up 20%, you're at 96, right? But
take some time.
It's going to take 25% gain to recover from a 20% loss. So if you take 20% of your portfolio and put into something high risk and it loses, your portfolio needs to go up 25% the next year just to get back to even. And so don't take too much risk. Do most of your investments into core, do a little bit explore, a little bit of crypto and those kind of things, just so if you're interested in those things. But if your strategy is like, I'm going to put it all in high risk and hope that it works, don't do that.
Yeah, it's gambling at that point.
It's gambling at that point. Take the core investment, invest it wisely, have an advisor, and use the strategies that are there. Get them to do the financial projections for you. Figure out how much money you need to save, and then work meticulously to get it to the point where your plan, if you need 1.5, that your plan gets you to 1.5 at retirement.
So for the average person, what is the dollar amount that they should be striving to save for in retirement?
That is a great question. It completely depends on how much they spend monthly. The monthly spend, having that budget, tells them how much they're going to need for retirement, right? So there's generational groupings of this. So if I look at someone who's like 65 plus, their typical lifestyle is $3,000 a month. So their need for retirement is in that $500,000 to $1 million bracket, okay? Because they just spend less.
Right. So
when I go down, as soon as I go down a generation to Generation X, okay, I go down to Generation X, their need typically is in that $5,000 to $8,000 a month. Okay, I go to millennials. Okay, the number goes up. I'm not sure. I'm like, we're all living in the same world. Okay, the Gen Xers probably have bigger houses than the millennials, which is interesting. But the millennials are spending more. Okay, and so that is the whole concept is you need to get your expenses in a reasonable range in order to reduce the amount you need to retire. Okay, and if you get it into a reasonable range, you want to be spending. You typically don't want to be spending more than 60% of your take home. Okay, if you get it in that range, and you increase the savings, then you're going to retire on it. You'll be fine, but the number will change according to what generation. I'm concerned about the Gen Alpha as I see that generational change of how much people are spending. I'm concerned about what they think they need to spend for their lifestyle and how they're going to accommodate retirement. Countries are starting to push that retirement age, 67, 68, 70. And it's concerning that we make people work longer versus creating better habits in people.
Yeah. I fall in that millennial age demographic, and there's a movement that took place probably about a decade ago, maybe longer, called FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early, where people were really focused on how do we minimize our spending as much as humanly possible, invest as much as we can, and then retire at a really young age. And so you see different financial bloggers out there, whether it's Mr. Money Mustache, Aussie Firebug, whatever. But now, 10 years later of reading their blogs, I see a switch starting to take place where it seems like the life fulfillment isn't there as much as it was when they were pursuing something. What do you think happens psychologically when someone's pursuing a goal so hard, they hit it, and there isn't a goal that follows after that?
That is the trap of the people who seek the comfort. Okay, the real, the whole title of this podcast is fantastic, right? So the currency of happiness. What's going to make you happy is moving forward. Your life has to move forward, and if you don't have a goal to attach to that movement, it's going to seem empty. Okay. This is often why you see wealthy people, especially in the later part of their life, giving so much money away and being involved in things that bring them purpose, because they hit the goals and they get the wealth, and they potentially set another goal and get the wealth, and they're still lacking fulfillment. So it's not a one size fits all situation here, where it's like just set a goal and you'll feel fulfilled. That is one part of fulfillment. The next part is finding purpose. Okay, so the place where I find a lot of purpose is helping people create that roadmap of how to get them to financial independence, get them retired on time, help them find peace in their financial world. That brings me a lot of joy when I watch someone look at the financial plan, like the real visual piece of it, and they get it, and you can just see the weight come off them. That brings me great joy. I enjoy doing that. I will continue to do that a long time, right? And then the next piece is giving money. Like, I love finding a cause that I can give to that's going to impact generations. That people are doing some good work. Find some great causes in your community that you can give to, and give substantially. That'll motivate you, where you're like once you get the house and the car and the vacations you want, okay, well, the next vacation isn't going to fulfill you more than the last vacation. It might be a cool experience, but at some point it's just like, okay, I've seen it all. I've had it all, now what? And it's impact. And so some of it is, children and generations, and impacting your family and people around you. Some of it's imparting knowledge, taking time to meet with great guys like you, Andrew, and participate in like podcasts and stuff, so you can pass some of this on, and then giving away, and impacting other people's lives is critical. So if you've hit a goal and you're finding yourself, hey, I'm feeling bored. You need a challenge. You need a goal. You need something that scares you, right? You need to do that introspective walk around your community and think, okay, what could I impact change here? We're on next to campus at RDP here, and there's a fantastic family in our community, the Donalds, who've given literally tens of millions of dollars to the community. They helped build the hockey arena in our community. They helped build this school here. They ended up naming the business school after them, the Donald School of Business. That community that family saw a need in the community and put great resources behind impacting change. And you may not give $10 million. You might not ever write a check for $10 million, but you got to think like, hey, maybe I could help feed a family at Christmas. Maybe I could help build a children's wing at a hospital. Maybe I can give towards a cancer ward, or something that is close to my heart. There's one friend of mine who gives tremendously to the hospice. His father went through there, and he loved the care that his dad got at the hospice. And he works hard, and often is inviting me to things where it's like this, where they're raising money for the hospice because it matters to him. So find something that matters to you. Set a goal, saying, okay, I'm going to hit this next goal. And then this time, instead of increasing my lifestyle, I'm going to give 20% of that next goal to this charity. Okay. And then watch the director of the charity weep as you bring that check, or how thankful they are. It's incredible.
Creating a legacy.
Yeah.
Creating those moments. Ryan, if someone's interested in finances, wants to study a little bit more, what's a book that you would recommend for them?
Well, it depends on where they are. If they're like, they want a system to automate their life, David Bach's Automatic Millionaire is fantastic. Okay. If you're like, hey, I'm no good with money. How do I just set this up so I am a millionaire? Okay. That one. If you're like, I want to learn more about stock investments and being better at picking investments and that kind of stuff, read a lot of stuff. Okay. You got to read market indicators and all this stuff. The first one I started with, my uncle recommended to me, was Common Stocks, Uncommon Profits. And of course, the encyclopedia, or the big one, is The Intelligent Investor, Benjamin Graham. Okay. Benjamin Graham is who taught Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett took his course. I think it was at Wharton Business School, the same place Donald Trump went, by the way. Don't hate Wharton. And then and they figured out value investing, and value investing has been a big thing. And so like there's all kinds of book on it. If you're in debt, like I said, the Financial Peace University, if you just want to read a book on it, there's a Total Money Makeover. But there's lots of great books out there that will help people work through those things. But listen to the podcast. Get with other people. the book will take you so far. You also need some accountability. You need someone that you're going to be like, okay, here's what we paid off. Here's what we did. That's why a financial advisor is great. This is what we're working on. This is how we're moving forward. To get that feedback on a continual basis is really critical, so that you don't get a little bit of traction and then go back to your old habits. Right.
What's a quote or a motto that you hold on to?
I have a great advisor in my life, not a financial advisor, an advisor. Okay. I don't like to say mentor. I think that's like 20 years ago. Okay. He advises me on things. He says, if you cannot save, greatness is not in you. Okay. That's a Troy Walker quote. Well, when he said that, it lit something in me to prove that I had greatness in me. And I believe everyone has greatness in them.
So good.
But they have to bring it out of themselves. And so I want you to start a movement in your friend group to talk about and share with each other what percentage of your investments or of your income are you saving? What percentage are you saving? You don't tell them dollar amounts or how much you're making, anything like that. So start a little competition. Can you start a race to see who can get to 50% first? I've done this with buddies. I have a really good buddy. He's moved down to the US now. Lovely guy. He and I would meet for lunch and we'd say, okay, what percentage are you at? How have you carved out your life? And he and I would challenge each other. And partially because of that has put us both on a course of great success because we didn't overspend. He's able to go down and live in the US now because he has the freedom to do so because he's followed some of these principles. And that's so key. Don't overspend. Save what you can. Crank up the savings. You'll get there faster. You'll hit a tipping point in your finances. When your finances are growing more than you're adding to the account, that's the first tipping point. Okay? So that takes some movement, but you got to start somewhere. So you start, you'll notice that tipping point. Oh, look, the investments grew more than we put in. Okay? Then a few years later, you'll be like, oh, the investments are growing so much. What we put in doesn't matter.
That's an incredible feeling.
That is an incredible feeling. Okay? For people who are like, oh, well, I want to start out with millions and I can't start yet. That's one of the biggest psychological hurdles that I don't want to start until I have enough to not be embarrassed when I go to the advisor. You won't be embarrassed. We don't care where you start. We care that you start. And a lot of people are trying to I'll start when the market's down or something like that. But there's this other quote that is critical. I have this guy who had a huge portfolio, huge, more money than I have, crazy money. Okay. And I said, what's your philosophy? He's like, it's not timing the market. It's time in the market. Start as soon as you can with as much as you can. Time in the market is critical to hit these tipping points. But if you never start, you'll never hit them.
Ryan Gonce, what does happiness look like to you?
Happiness look like to me? A lot of it we've talked about. I have structures in my life, so I don't worry about money. I have structures in my life, so I don't fight with my wife about money. Okay. Happiness in the home matters hugely. We have 4 children, right? So if there's no tension between Kathy and I, then that's step 1, right? And then spending time with my family is happiness. Whether we're on vacation or at home, or I'm just watching them play one of their sports or in a piano recital or watching them, cry their little tears as they're trying to learn their new piano song because that's their little struggle in their world, right? As I sit there with them and push them through those, that's happiness. You see them win. You get to spend that time with them. Maybe we're just cuddled up reading Charlotte's Web or have the time to tuck them in. That is all happiness. If you're beyond where I am with little kids and stuff right now, and maybe you're in the spot where your kids have moved out, I don't know for that phase. I'm currently concerned for myself about that phase because I will miss the children being in the home so much. Even this morning with my 16-year-old daughter, I said, Abby, just so you know, you can stay at our house as long as you want. You don't have to move out at 18 or whatever. We'll always have a place for you because I love having them around. And to me, like family is so important.
Thank you so much for your time, Ryan.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you again, Ryan, for taking the time to share your perspective on money, clarity, and building systems that actually help us move our life forward. If this episode hit home in any way, I would love to encourage you to share it with someone that you think that would gain value from it.